Hello, good people. Did you know that I lived in Japan for 2 years? Well, now you know. So I lived in Japan from 2012 to 2014, and I was there on the JET program. So, what is the JET program? The JET program stands for the Japan Exchange and Teaching Program. They send people from other countries to Japan to teach mostly English, but they also send them to work in local government offices as well as sometimes to do sports. But the main thing is to go teach English. Sometimes they have people go teach French or Spanish, but that's pretty rare. So I was over in Japan as a ALT. An ALT stands for an assistant language teacher. Assistant language teachers are in the classroom with Japanese teachers, helping them teach English. So my job was to hold flashcards, speak to the kids, grade their homework, all kinds of different things that would assist the Japanese English teacher on teaching the students English. There's also the CIR position, Coordinator for International Relations. So those are the people who work in local government offices and work on translation and interpretation. They do delegation visits, or if there's signage in the city that needs to be replaced and have English in it, they help with those types of things. You usually need N1 or N2 on the Japanese proficiency exam, so one of the highest or the second highest level in order to be in that position. And you need to have some sort of sense of working in a government office because you're going to be working in an actual city hall or a government building with Japanese people, and so you need to be able to follow the rules and know how they're really going to ask you to act. The other position that's not as popular is the SEA position. SEA is the Sports Exchange Advisor. I actually don't know it that well because I don't know anyone who is an SEA, but every once in a while, once in a blue moon, the JET program will open up this position, and it will be to go be a baseball coach, volleyball coach, some sort of sports advisor to a school. But it's usually like really high ranking former like Olympic athletes or former athletes in general that go for that position, and they open it up so rarely that nobody really remembers that it's actually a position you can apply for to be on the JET program. So when you go to apply for the program, usually you're in your junior, like the second semester of your junior year, or maybe the first semester of your senior year. And the application process is pretty simple. You fill out some questions, you write some essays, and then if you pass the paper exam, that usually comes out in around November. If you pass that exam, then in January you'll get a notification that you've been invited to interview. And then you go interview at your local consulate, which is again a mini embassy, sort of like a mini territory of that country in bigger cities. The nearest one, though, might not be close to you, so sometimes you have to fly or you have to drive to it. For example, I was living in LA at the time that I applied for the JET program, so I had to go to the LA consulate, even though I'm originally from Chicago. And at the time, I thought I was going to depart from Chicago, but it turned out that I departed from LA. So I had to fly back to Chicago after college ended for a couple months and then fly back to LA to leave for Japan. So again, it depends on which consulate you're close to. So you go to interview and you're asked a lot of different questions. And there's definitely a lot of videos about how to interview for the JET program. I can link some of those below. But I would say the biggest thing they're always looking for is teaching experience of some sort. So whether you worked at a camp or you've tutored people or anything like that is going to be a big advantage because that's essentially what you're helping the Japanese English teachers do while you're in Japan. So if you have anything in that or working with children, that's going to be definitely a plus. Also personality, right? You have to sort of be Genki, as they might say. So really energetic, really excited. I often found myself, it wasn't like theater, but I often found myself really over-exaggerating things and being really energetic. I couldn't go to work like, okay, hi, today we're gonna do this, and then yeah, okay. I would always be like, hi everyone, how are you doing? Things like that. It doesn't have to be fake, but it does have to be sort of like your genuine, happy sort of personality. And then after the interview, you'll find out if you got in. They usually take, I'm trying to remember the numbers. It depends on the consulate. So I left from LA, which takes a large number of people. I also worked at the Chicago consulate. I know we took about 150 something people, but it varies by year as well. So they usually take thousands of people. And at the same time, in Japan, thousands of people are leaving. So the idea is that there are jets who have either completed their term, they've completed 5 years, they completed 3 years, however many years, 1 year, and they're leaving. And so then now we need new people to come in. So after you interview, you find out if you got in about April. It's probably the longest waiting period ever. And especially if you are a senior in college, you know, there's so much going on. You don't know like what's going to happen next. And you're like, oh my gosh, I have to graduate and I have to do all this stuff. I need to have a job, all these different things. So it's a little bit nerve-wracking. There's only one exception to that, which is if you had already graduated and you're applying, you could apply for early departure and you would find out earlier because they leave in April. The reason for this is the Japanese school year goes from April to August, September to December, and then January to March. That's sort of like a trimester school year. And so you leave in April and you get to come in with the new teachers. You're a new teacher. It sort of works out. Everybody else goes in August, usually is departure. And that means that you're going in the middle of the semester. The students probably had another teacher for the first semester. So it can be a little bit awkward, but they're used to it by now. It's been over 30 years that the program has been around. And so the students are used to English teachers and people coming from different countries to be their English teachers at this point. But it definitely takes a little bit of an adjustment once you get there in August. So if you find out you got in April, then you start the whole process of getting your fingerprints. You have to go get your health checked, all these different things that you need to move abroad, essentially. Give me 1 second. Gotta drink some water. So you are doing all these things, preparing, you're packing, and getting really excited about going to live in another country. And when I did it, I was definitely nervous. I had never lived anywhere other than the US, and never really outside Chicago except for in LA, which was a really big leap for me in general. So to have to move all the way across the world to Japan was definitely like a scary moment. And so we got all excited. We go to orientation in the States. So you go to orientation at the consulate and they usually talk to you about what to expect the first few days. You know by then your placement and you know a couple of different things, but they answer more of the questions. You know, people get really excited and nervous, so they're answering a lot of those questions before you leave. And then you all go get on a big plane. It's not all jet participants, but it's a majority jet participants. And then you go to Japan, and for the first few days you have Tokyo orientation, which is at the Keio Plaza Hotel. It has always been at the Keio Plaza Hotel, I think, at least for the time that I've known people, it's been there. And you get to meet all of the other jets who are all really excited. You're all dressed in suits, even though it's the middle of August and it is super hot and sweaty in Japan, but you just sort of have to, again, be ready for anything. And then you're there for about 2.5 days. And then on the last day, they put you together with people that are in your prefecture. And you all go and leave and get on buses and go, or planes in some cases. Some people are on islands. Some people are down in Okinawa, right, like further down. So you have to go get on a plane sometimes. But I just had to get on a bus because I was in Chiba Prefecture, which, again, I've said this many times, is the best prefecture. It's right outside of Tokyo. It has Tokyo Disneyland. It has Narita Airport. It has beaches and it has mountains. It is just the best. I should also note that I was a Chiba-kun ambassador. Chiba-kun is the yuri character for the prefecture. He looks like the shape of the prefecture. He's kind of like a dog. He's like, they call him a fushigi na dobutsu, which means like a strange animal thing, but he looks like Clifford's cousin, if you ask me. You've seen him in some of my other videos, but I love Chiba Prefecture. So as a Chiba Prefecture ambassador, I got to go to like all the different places. We got to stay in ryokan and all these different things. That's a whole nother story. But I got to go to Chiba Prefecture and I lived in a small town at the bottom of it called Kamogawa, which means duck river, literally. There was a river there, but it wasn't like filled with ducks or anything. And I lived right by the ocean in a small apartment. And I'll tell you, apartments they're based on how many rooms. So you'll call it, like, and then it's living room, dining, and kitchen. So I had a 1 LDK, which meant that I had one room, which is also sort of like a living room-ish area. I had a dining and a kitchen, but they were half dining, half kitchen. So it wasn't very big. It was probably 600 square feet, maybe. I remember when I first arrived into the apartment and all of the furniture was so tiny. I was like, am I in a dollhouse? Like, this is amazing. Like the couch maybe came up to like, I don't know, like up to my, like halfway up my thigh. And I was just like, can I sit on this? And I did, many a day. And there was also a futon. So that was really, really great. So besides living in my awesome 1 LDK, which was in an apartment complex with 5 other people. Oh, I should tell you this story. This is one of the failures and probably why none of my neighbors ever spoke to me or even acknowledged me, or at least the ones that live in my building. The ones next door to me and everything like that in other buildings, got to know them really well. They became some of my closest friends. There was a sushi bar right next to me. He had the freshest fish. I still remember that meal. So good. Anyways, so being from Chicago, I thought I'm gonna bring Franco mints to the other apartment people. And normally the culture in Japan is when you move into a building, you go knock on each door and give people a gift. It might be detergent or, I don't know, something for their home, but you're like, hi, I'm here. I apologize in advance if I'm going to cause you any inconvenience. Here's this gift to make up for that. Me being impatient, not fully knowing that you're supposed to go door to door and do it and introduce yourself. Also, it just like, it didn't feel like everybody knew each other. It felt very siloed. Like everybody had their own unit and they were not talking to each other or anything like that. So it wasn't that type of place. But I was like, okay, I'm just gonna go drop chocolate and a card in each of their mailboxes in the middle of August, the hottest month in Japan. So my guess, since they never spoke to me ever, my guess is that I put the chocolate in there, and even though it was wrapped in plastic, the plastic probably melted and the chocolate probably melted. And all of their mail got covered in chocolate, and their mailbox got covered in chocolate, and they had to clean it out? Possibly. That might be what happened. Whoopsies. Don't do that if you go to Japan. Just make sure that they're home, take them the gift, and be done with it. Don't leave it in their mailbox, unless it's a non-perishable gift, in which case you should be okay. So I do that, and that is the end of that. And I go to my place. I'm inside, decorating all these different things. I also have a car, so I had to get a driver's license, an international driver's license before I left Chicago or LA. And then after a year, I had to get a Japanese license, which I'll show you in another video and talk about that whole process because that was fun. I was an ippatsu, which means I passed on the first try. Hi. Anyways, I had a car because all of my schools were not within like biking or walking distance. And my town was a small town. It was probably like 30,000 people, but it was pretty spread out. And so you had to drive pretty much everywhere. You could walk a couple of places, but not too many. So I had to get used to driving, which was, I remember those mornings driving, blasting my music in the countryside in Japan. Oh, such a fun time. But I had at my most 7 schools, so I was what you call a multiple school ALT, which meant that I was at multiple schools, sometimes 2 or 3 schools a day, and I was always driving in between them and doing those different things. There are some pros and some cons with every situation, and you'll hear this a lot if you ever apply to JET. Every situation is different. ESID. It is drilled into your brain before you leave, and it is drilled into your brain for the rest of your life because it is true. Every situation on JET is different. Even the people that lived in the same town as me had a different experience as me. And even some of the ones that went to the same school had a different experience as me. So every situation is different. I, on a typical Wednesday, for example, would have kindergarten, would be like my first hour. And then I would go to the it was a joint junior elementary school that was the same school as the kindergarten, but it was still down the road from it. And then in the afternoon, I would go to a different elementary school. So within one day, I'm going to 3 different schools. I would usually go from the kindergarten to the junior/elementary school, eat lunch with them, and then go to the next school. But then on Thursdays, for example, I started out at one school in the morning and then I had to go to another school. So I'd leave the first school in the morning and then go to the other school and have lunch with them. It was a lot. And the pros and cons are that, the pro is that you get to meet almost like all the students in your town. You get to meet all the teachers. Like, it's really great to meet so many different people that are willing to like help you and do things like that. But because of the way Japanese culture is, and it's sort of like a group culture, always like within your group type of thing, if you're going from school to school, you don't really get to be part of any group. So you're sort of just on your own. And my home base was the Board of Education. Some people's home bases are their schools, but mine was the Board of Education. So that was supposed to be like my in-group, but I barely saw them. I would see them only when school was closed, like during the holidays, or if I didn't have school for some reason because of testing or something like that. So didn't really have like a group per se, but I did got to meet a lot of the different students, got to see different schooling types, different principals. I could do a whole nother video about the principals. That's not a good, the questions they asked me, because I spoke Japanese, they were like really all up in my business. But the cons, or that was sort of the cons. Once I decided to leave, once I was like, hey y'all, I've been here for a year, I'm gonna stay for one more, but then I'm gonna leave, and it started to get closer to my leaving, everybody wanted to hang out with me. All the teachers were like, oh, we need to go do this. Oh, we need to go do this. Oh, let's go do this. So by that point, they had gotten used to me and they saw that I was sort of like, really trying my best to be a part of the system and things like that. So that definitely got better as I was getting ready to leave, which was too bad, because I really would have liked to get to know more of them my first year and had more time to spend with them. But alas, that was how that experience worked for me. There are so many different aspects of my JET experience that I will talk about and make other videos about, but I wanted to give you sort of an overview of my JET experience, what it was like applying, what it was like getting there, and what my position was. So I hope you enjoyed this. Hopefully you'll subscribe so that I can keep making videos about my JET experience, because I'm sure you want to hear about it. はい、それではまたね。